Welcome to Talking Digital, Core Optimization podcast, and a behind-the-scenes look of agency life and how strategy is put together. This episode we're joined by Lisa Dunn, who's our head of PPC, Chelsea McGrane, who's our senior digital strategist, and Hayden, who's our chief digital officer. Similar to the last podcast, we're going to start with a little bit behind the scenes in terms of how we got into the whole industry and how we ended up sitting here in a podcast studio today with Core Optimization. Lisa, you're to my left. We'll start with you.
Great. So my name's Lisa. I'm a PPC lead here at Core Optimization. Kind of a strange journey into media. Just a lot of random interactions along the way. So I studied media in college, but like photography, filmmaking, radio. So then first job out of college, trying to stick into that area, I went into media monitoring. So I was quite literally listening to the radio for a few hours a day. But that was at the height of kind of like Twitter was taking off, and overall internet bits and pieces were like really like on the rise. And I ended up in the blogging space for a little while, had some moderate success there. From there, went into content writing professionally, which led me into digital marketing. And then I just happened upon paid search and then never looked back. And here I still am doing paid search about 12 years later.
Super. Chelsea, your background.
Yeah, so I actually studied journalism in college. I was always very interested in digital media in particular, and we did a social media module and I just kind of fell in love with it. I also just personally always loved social media. It was kind of chronically online throughout my teenage years, so it suited well seeing the behind the scenes of it all. And then from there, I went to a graduate program. So I worked at a global FMCG and did a social media kind of executive role for 2 years, and then moved into account management. So there I would have started off with kind of Irish clients, smaller budgets, doing digital strategies across everything from like creative, website, SEO and paid media as well. And then moved into kind of bigger European brands, US brands, and then kind of managing strategies for worldwide brands. So that was great experience for me. And starting in the agency that I was in, it was kind of an internal agency. We saw kind of times changing as well, in the sense that influencer marketing became really big and social first creative became big. So we kind of fleshed out new arms to our agency based on that. And I think that's been a big part of my career, is trying to see where the curve is going with digital and being able to adapt. So I was there for 8 years. By the time I left, I was the head of client success and managed a team of account managers, and then just kind of wanted a change. So about a year ago, I joined Core Optimization. I've been loving it. I've really enjoyed getting to work on different accounts, looking at different sectors, and also bringing some of the skills like influencer marketing that I would have done in a previous role to Core as well. And I also do content creation. So around the same time I joined Core, and that was another kind of new avenue for me. So yeah, I'm really into the whole influencer marketing space and all things social. So excited to chat to you today.
Brilliant. And sure.
Not far off Chelsea's background, actually. I didn't actually realise that you'd done journalism, but I did the same. So I think initially I didn't have too much of a clear plan directly after school, and I didn't actually get anything in the CAO, and I got a third round offer in journalism. And I was about 4 months into it when I Googled, what can you do with a journalism degree that's not journalism? The first thing that came up was ads. So that's actually what set me off then on that journey. So I ended up finishing that degree and going straight into a nighttime course and got my master's in marketing, which is what I wanted. And I guess similar to Lisa, you know, blogging had just come out, which seems like I hadn't heard the word blogging in a while. Like,
it's a throwback.
I had a fishing blog.
Pre-influencer days, yeah.
I had a fishing blog and I loved it. So from there, similar to Chelsea, I stayed in the agency. So I think I started off in a couple of the independent agencies, went into Holdcos, and now back full circle in independent. So I'm at Core Optimization about 2.5 years now, and it's really been a very exciting time to be an agency. I think we're going to talk about some of it today, but like Chelsea says, some of the changes within the industry, it almost feels refreshing. Like it doesn't feel, it's never stale in agency. So no, that's how I've been here.
I think that's the great thing as we've grown as an agency. You have people from so many different backgrounds. As I said before, I come from a PR background. It's not traditional, I'm a traditional marketing background. You name it, I did it at some stage in the last 20 odd years. And I think our whole team is across that board.
Yeah.
They have different expertise. They have different backgrounds. Some of them are in-house, some of them are agency, and it's the perfect mix for us. So I'm going to stick with you, George, just to give an idea of the Chief Digital Officer, obviously with the agency, big role for us in terms of managing clients and all that side of the house. Just give us a feel for what you actually kind of bring to the table.
What I do on a day-to-day basis is never actually the same. So every day looks different, and I think that's what makes it exciting. For the most part, I'd lead a team of audience specialists, media specialists, data specialists, data science, in order to bring solutions to clients around commercial goals. And I think that is something that we definitely do different at Core Optimization versus maybe some of the jobs that I've worked in the past, is that we really look at business outcomes rather than ROAS and channel specific silos. And I think that's what's so exciting. So the orchestration of those teams and bringing together a solution for a client that's, centered around commercial growth is what I do on a daily basis. But I guess, like anyone that's worked in agency knows, no 2 days are the same. You get different briefs. Every client's on a different journey. So I guess that's where the fun comes from.
Yeah, and that's agency life. And there's just something Chelsea touched on there as we go into it. And Chelsea's role is trying to be ahead of the curve. And you just said that, and that's kind of sums up exactly where agencies have to be. They can't look back to what we did 2 years ago or what we did 10 years ago. In your role, senior strategist, and obviously you have the influencer side of the house as well, your day-to-day is definitely never the same. So just give us a feel for your a day in the life.
Yeah, so I think with everyone in agency, it can be different day to day. But for me, working really closely with my clients to understand what their strategy is for the year, trying to get ahead of what their competitors are doing, what's going on in the industry, and kind of give them as much of that research as possible to take the heavy lifting off them. So really just kind of setting strategies, working directly with our team. So I would work really closely with our paid media team, with our SEO team, just to really make sure that everything is running smoothly and we can do as much as we can for the client. So that's kind of one element of it. And then influencer has been something that we've been working on. So as I said, my background would have been in an agency doing influencer marketing and then doing it myself, getting to see from the other side. So working with all of our clients to see what influencers would be a good fit, what the strategy should be for them, booking the influencers, giving feedback on creative. And one of the things that I think we're really lucky to have is such access to the data because we manage the ads as well. So I work so closely with the social team to see what is performing and take our learnings from there. So kind of two different elements to the role, and I think that's what keeps it exciting.
Brilliant. And Lisa, from a head of PPC perspective inside in Core Optimization, your day to day. My day to day,
it's funny how different it can be from one side, like one end of the day to the next, and one end of the week and I think it's because we work with so many different types of clients. So you could be working on hospitality on Monday, you could be working on insurance on Tuesday and e-commerce by Wednesday. And then you've come full circle all of a sudden. So you're kind of putting yourself into that headspace of what that kind of business is like, what their objectives are, and basically what the consumer journey looks like for this particular product or that particular service, because depending on what you're buying or what you're researching, you're kind of going to go about it in a different way. So trying to, like, when we're working on a paid search solution or equally a holistic search solution, that looks different for every client. So it's understanding kind of what is paid search bringing to the role? How is it complementing what we're doing on organic? Is it closing the loop on the demand that the social is driving or that the influencer is bringing as well? And then you get to do the deep dive into the data as well, understanding what's performing, and play around in Excel for a little while and like look at the numbers and like deep dive into the data and optimize from there. And I think that's one thing as an agency that, which probably 2 years now since we set up the data department as a standalone department, it's been a huge kind of sea change for us as an agency to actually have that a resource that Lisa can go to, that Chelsea can go to, that Jordan, the teams can actually go to and say, okay, Eleanor, you and your team, what are we looking at here? Really deep diving into it. Because for too long it was kind of, the data was there, but the data was nice. You know, now the data is there and the data is understood and data is spliced and diced whatever way it needs to be to allow you to, I suppose, to get better bang for your buck in terms of your spend.
Ger, one of the things I wanted to touch on with you was kind of measurement to an extent, right? And we actually touched this in the previous episode with Gavin and the lads who were on thing. From your perspective, right? And clients are different. Everyone has a different thing. The days of ROAS is the answer, or ROAS is the goal. Is that gone?
It is in a way. I think ROAS as a channel specific metric is a great way to understand the health of a campaign, but as a standalone metric, it's gone. I think ROAS is flawed in some ways, in the sense that like it's decoupled with commercial growth. It can incentivize you to get the same customers multiple times, but at the same time, if it ladders into an overall business goal, like it works perfectly well. What we would believe in more is that we're using business data to understand the impact and the effectiveness of our media. So what that would look like for a clothing brand would be, well, which clothes brings the highest profit to the client? Are we pushing that in the correct way? And what way do we measure it? I think there was a long time within the digital industry where people felt that there was this silver bullet, that digital was, this new form of advertising that you could track perfectly. But the reality of it was that was never perfect. You could always argue every attribution model. And I think the only way to truly get an understanding of what you're doing is to have the correct strategy and have measurement pillars against that.
And I think that ties in actually to where we've, again, progressed to as an agency with the number of channels now we now offer. The way we look strategy first, outcome first, and then we just divvy down and say, okay, we need Lisa in this stage, we need Chelsea's team in this stage, we need Brian's team, or whoever it happens to be. And I'll move on to you, Chelsea, from that perspective as a strategist, who's sitting down, working with your clients, devising the plan, devising what channels we're going to use. Influencer in the consumer side is a big deal at the moment. Back when I was in my PR days, we hired famous people to be ambassadors, and they went to a press launch and they got their photo taken and they kind of went home, or we shot an ad. Yeah. Now you have to really earn your bucks, right? So I'd love to get a little bit of insight in terms of how influencer can be at the heart of some strategies for some clients.
Yeah, definitely. I think a couple of years ago, the approach to influencer marketing was very much PR. So it was a name that was well known at an event being photographed with a product. But I think as influencer has really grown, brands are now starting to see that you can actually drive performance and that you can really drive sales with influencer marketing. But I think a lot of brands aren't doing it effectively, in the sense that it might be brand teams that are briefing the influencers, but we kind of noticed a bit of a gap in the market, in the sense that having a paid specialist or your digital agency being looped in to those campaigns is really important. So for us, rather than taking that kind of PR approach that we hope this garners a little bit of awareness, instead we'll look at how we can actually drive sales. And I think a big shift is a lot of brands assume influencers know how to create content that's going to shift the dial. But a lot of influencers only have background in organic. They don't understand how paid works. And there is a difference there. So for us, we kind of take the heavy lifting from the clients to say, we'll formulate the briefs with a paid lens. And in that, it's things like making sure that there's a hook in the first 3 seconds. We have access to audience behaviour, so we know that people are rapidly scrolling and that we've got to stop them quickly. So again, an influencer from an organic perspective mightn't think like that. So we make sure if we are briefing someone that they've got that, they've also got a good kind of hold rate, that they're telling a story that's going to keep someone engaged, and then finally a call to action, because at the end of the day, as much as we want it to feel organic and natural, we're trying to drive sales or use of a service or whatever it may be. So I think for us, it's taking that more performance lens to influencer marketing. We've seen great success with that. So a lot of our clients now, influencer ads are outperforming brand ads or improving the performance of brand ads as well.
So Chelsea's making your life easier. That's the case, Lisa.
Yeah, well, to Ger's point, I think a couple of years ago with digital and particularly with search, it was so easy to get kind of overly focused on the lower funnel, and search would get all the credit. And I'd take it sometimes. But to steal a phrase that I learned from Ger a while ago, like, search doesn't drive search. It's there capturing the demand, but you need something driving it. So I would always be the proponent of, search isn't, is there anything else we can do on search? It's like, what are you doing on social? What are you doing feeding that demand? Because without the work that like Chelsea and the team would be doing, I mean, I'm a pull channel. I'm not a push channel. Yeah. So like, what have I got to draw in then?
Yeah. And on that, even with kind of attribution, as we spoke about there, with influencer, it can be tough because, again, some people expect, right, we're formulating this brief for conversion. How many sales did that influencer drive? But it doesn't necessarily work like that. Like, you can obviously do things like UTM links or discount codes, but ultimately you need to look at the bigger picture. So we would look at like search demand. Is brand search demand increasing? Obviously, the influencer is kind of spreading that awareness. Or did the brand get more followers? Or are we getting more traffic to the site? And I think it is like that bigger picture
100%.
thing. Yeah.
I think the fact that all of the different policies that come in, from GDPR to the California Privacy Act and all of these things, it was actually, as much as painful as it was to go through some of it, there is an acceptance across the industry that we can't measure in the same way. Mm-hmm. And I think that's been so helpful. There was always one camp that said we can, one camp that said we can't. And I think what's come out of it is an acceptance that, you know, it's making the best decisions with imperfect data at times. And the only thing that you can have and you can stand over is the strategy that you set yourself up with. And I think even back in the day when we were planning, you could just easily say Meta was your brand awareness and search was your direct response. And it was a much easier time to be a planner. Whereas now, even Lisa's saying about lower funnel PPC. I mean, PPC is as much upper funnel now, really, Lisa, isn't it, with PMAXs and everything else. Yeah. And equally, the measurement, looking at the brand search, like Chelsea says, is key.
Yeah, I just wonder, as we're talking, and you were chatting there about, you were saying it's very search or about outcome driven. So it's outcome driven for our clients, right? So the three of you are in three different elements of the business here, but you all sit down together at the high end, you know, QBRs with our clients and whatnot. You don't have to do every channel. You know, and that I suppose that maturity as an agency to turn around to a client and say, actually, yeah, influencer in this case, search where you actually don't need to, whatever. Those conversations when you're scoping out the conversation with these lads, you bring how many the team in, all the channels in, have a look at it.
Depends. Usually the strategists would sit down, we'd have a look at their data to begin with. Like, we'd have a look at their own first party data for what they've run in the past, and then equally, I think Lisa used the phrase the push and pull channels. Every brand wants sales tomorrow. And like, I think we'd all be millionaires if we could do that. But the reality of it is you can very quickly see, well, what's the maximum, if we converted everyone that was searching for your brand tomorrow, what's the maximum revenue that you get off the back of that? And if that number isn't enough, you've got to move into brand. So it's kind of at that point, then you can bring in the specialists and you can start brainstorming, well, how do you grow that demand? And like you say, it's so much harder these days to dilute your budget. There's so many brands that think, okay, we better run across everything and every format. But as a planner, one of the hardest things on a daily basis these days is deciding those channels, because every platform is telling us that we can reach every customer whatever way we want at any time. So it's about the effectiveness of those choices.
Super. Moving then on, I suppose, to, and again, it's touching on something Chelsea's already arranged about audience behaviour. In terms of the tools we're using, lads, to look at audience behaviour and how that, I suppose, influences our strategy and influences the outcomes we're agreeing with the clients. I don't know who wants to take that now. It's kind of off script now, but
it's funny, actually. I think the thing that when I first got introduced to paid search, the thing that got me hooked on it was seeing that you could see the search queries. And I know that's going to make me sound like a super nerd, but I found that really fascinating because you could see what people were searching. So by understanding what people were searching and how they were searching for it, the phrasing they kind of used for it, you could then understand, well, how could I show up there then as an advertiser? And I think oftentimes when particularly if you're trying to drive online sales and you're trying to understand how it is that people are researching your product and finding your website, understanding that kind of behaviour is crucial, because then you can decide how you want to show up. So you could look at the search queries, the questions that people tend to ask, and what's on the rise, what's becoming more popular, and then decide, there's a brand piece that needs to be done here, because people are searching for reviews, or they're searching for like what's the best option for this particular service, or you realize that it's a content piece, and it could be organic, it could be SEO content tied with some social, and then you might realize, and then there's a portion of the traffic that is paid search, but that's being led by how people are searching and how you want to show up and being able to answer those queries as they come in.
And there is so many different ways that search is done now. I'm going to call social search, Chelsea. I'm looking across to you in terms of social search and the fact that I go into TikTok now to search how to fix something as opposed to going on the thing. So you're a renowned influencer in your own right. So you're well suited, but it is a complete sea change.
Yeah, 100%.
That is where, I'd be of an older demographic. I still search through the social channels now, as opposed to, and that's a big sea change. And are we seeing that, lads, across the board with clients?
Yeah, definitely. I think social SEO is huge now. And, you know, especially with Gen Z, we're seeing, I think it's 70% of Gen Z now are going to social to search. So it says a lot. And like, even for me, if I'm going on holiday, I'm planning my whole itinerary through TikTok. But also, for creators, there's a massive benefit because it gets a lot easier for visibility and for views if you can tap into social SEO. So making sure that you're looking at what keywords are trending. So similar, as you were saying about search, like understanding what topics are people searching on social, what keywords come up, how can I include that not only in my video when I'm talking, but also in my copy, my hashtags, so that my video will rank and I'll get higher views. So that's how creators are kind of seeing social SEO, but brands should be doing the same with their own content. And then even briefing influencers, making sure that the influencers are using the same keywords that they are, because ultimately in organic, there's now a big game to be played and there's a lot of benefits, whereas organic, especially for social, was probably a little bit more of a minefield before, but we've kind of got the tools now with social SEO to make sure we get that visibility.
Yeah, I find that intriguing, really. If you look for more old school marketer, that you can do that now and you can get so much bang for your buck. There was almost that kind of a sense of no, is this and now you can do it.
Yeah.
And now it's interesting because obviously people are searching social, people are searching through LLMs as well.
Just going to say, Kieran, like I think the SEO is taking a total resurgence as a channel, like if that's what we want to call it, over the last 18 months or so. And it's a mixture of, as Chelsea said, social SEO being incredible. Like for us to be seeing TikTok videos in the search engine results pages is nuts. Yeah. I think myself and Chelsea were looking at an example recently for a hospitality client, and an influencer was page 1 of Google before the brand's website. Yeah. Which is unheard of a couple of years ago. And then when we're looking at like understanding how people are feeling, how we need to speak to them, what should we be, what sort of content creation should we be putting in front of them in these ads? Not only is it the search queries that Lisa spoke about, but the information that we get from LLMs now is incredible because it's much more long tail. So if we think the way we search as people, like it used to be Hotel Malaga, and now it's where can I go for Hotel Malaga with my dog and my 9-month-old baby, and you get this really rich, like probably a much higher volume of unique searches that you can use to inform what you do. And I think what we do a little bit differently at Core is we use that to influence the wider strategy. So search information and search queries on both PPC and social aren't used as a standalone for those channels. They're used to inform what product teams should be doing, what we should be pushing next, what's trending. I think we work with a retailer, and we could see very early on this year that I think it was the first sunny day of the year, wasn't it? It was like April, 1st of April, and we could see a little spike in Aperol so quickly, so like that, being able to get in front of those things is fantastic.
We obviously have a PR element to our business as well in Core, and I just, again, obviously I go back to my own days when I started off in PR, and it was so hard. It was very siloed. It was off on its own. The ad agency didn't really want to know you. It wasn't even digital agencies back when I started. But, nowadays it's all tied into one. So you're talking about search, you're talking about queries, but that can underpin what Paddy and the PR team and Julie and our PR team can actually put out for that, for the next press release or the next drop or whatever it happens to be. And, there is a huge push towards that trusted content, right? So if I trust Chelsea as an influencer, I'll trust Chelsea, right? Or any influencer, because I've got that online relationship. There we are, we're going to trust them. From a media perspective, PR side of it, it allows us to get trust for some of our B2B clients through our PR angle and our consumer clients as well. So we've got the PR angle, we've got our social, we've got our paid search, we've got our influencer, we've got an overarching strategy with Chelsea, James, the team, yourself, Jar. But it all comes back to the clients. And I'm going to ask you on this, Jar. That relationship piece that we have, the understanding, but the relationship with a client. We've all been in agencies between the four of us longer than we probably want to admit at this stage, right? But managing that relationship with a client, and letting them understand what our strategy is along with themselves, but giving it time to breathe. It's one of my things that I always look at in terms of how quickly they want results, or how quickly we want results, or everyone wants results yesterday. You touched on it earlier, but how do you build a relationship with a client? So we let campaigns build, we let channels breed, etc.
It's a great question. I think it's setting yourself up correctly in the first place. I think one of the things that we definitely do well is set expectations at the beginning on both sides, and I think that's fundamentally where success happens. I think it's very easy to agree to an Excel set of projections that we all know we're not going to hit, right? So one of the things that I think we touched on earlier is brand search, but also generic. So if there's more generic searches in market than what we're capturing, there's room for growth. And it's just about, probably showing those steps on how you can increase and grow in that area.
Lisa, just in terms back to kind of the search side of things, PPC side of things, right? And understanding, I suppose, we're talking business outcomes earlier, but understanding margin, right? And understanding that, and something that I share an office with her, so I hear this a lot, is about paying to get customers you're already going to get, right? And this is a big thing in core, to make sure you're paying to get new customers, or customers who might be with another brand, who might be open to moving, right? But you have minimal margins, depending on the client base, to play with, right? So, again, I come from a consumer tech background where we had very little margin to play with. And when Core started working for me back in the day, that was the whole element. How can we make it work with very, very small points of margin? Your team, when they're looking at whether PMAX or looking at whatever campaigns they're rushing out there, it's really margin first, understanding profit for the client on a thing. There's no use running to stand still, or vanity metrics.
Yeah, vanity metrics, I think, is a big one to watch out for, because I think we have so many metrics in digital, particularly in search. You could get so obsessed with your cost per click, and it could drive all of your decisions, and then you're completely blinkered to everything else. Or you could be obsessed with your impression share, because it was seen to be so similar as share of voice. So I've got the highest impression share, so surely I'm winning. So it's about it's like what Ger said, setting those expectations early on, agreeing what are those fundamental pillars that we're going to measure, and pick the KPIs that tie back to those business objectives. So you could be driving a really great cost per acquisition, but if you don't know what the margin is on that particular product, that cost per acquisition is kind of just a number. But if you know in the back of your head that, there comes a point where the client is going to lose money if it costs more than €25 to drive, then that's your guardrail. And when you know that about your client and about their business, you see the performance in a whole different way, because there's more of a real world grounding to it. And I think that helps kind of drive the best performance overall, because otherwise you could optimize yourself into a corner because you were so obsessed with what this one particular vanity metric. But when you take a step back, there's kind of no real impact on the business at the end of the day when it comes to how much that click cost when it came to driving the traffic.
I suppose that's... Sorry, Joe.
So I was just going to say on that one, I think it's funny the way in digital we can speak and get so caught up with all of the different acronyms, but we'd never do it if we were talking about in store. So when we're talking about clicks and impressions, if you owned the store and someone walked around your store and had a look, put something in their basket and left, you'd say that person did X. Whereas we're saying clicks and everything else. So a lot of the times bringing it back to logic, good ads, good offers, the right people, right platforms, the ad will work. But oftentimes, you can nearly feel yourself in a meeting falling into the trap of the platforms want us to speak in this way. And, it's about bringing logic back into it, and people. This is a people business,
Yeah, people buy. At the end of the day, people buy. Whether it's a consumer or a B2B, it's still people buy. Chelsea, from a strategist perspective, you're dealing with these conversations. You're dealing with all the things that lads have spoken to there. Putting it all together, I always say that puppet master. I always call the strategist the puppet master. You have your various channels, and you might have to turn around to one of those channels and go, we might be cutting a bit of budget this quarter because we're actually going to drive down another channel. Yeah. How does everyone still love you? That's the question.
It's actually one of those roles where you're like, this is kind of tough, because when something goes wrong, you're also the face of it, and then you're the bearer of bad news a lot of the time. But I think honestly, it's all about teamwork. And for me as a strategist, just being very lucky to have great teams around me. So whenever a brief comes in, it's getting together, figuring out what we need. And, you know, there's no egos. There's maybe not the resource for something, or we've got certain types of assets, so it would be better suited to this channel. So honestly, it's really teamwork that has been great. And I'm very lucky to have a great team on all the accounts that I'm on, and that things have been running really smoothly.
Defo. I think one of the things as well, Chelsea, you definitely do very well. And we have at Cores that the buyers are involved on a day-to-day basis, and that's definitely not something that I've seen working in other agencies. You know, you probably have a shared resource of a social team across a couple of agencies or something like that, whereas when we have a team on an account, it is the social, the influencer specialist, whoever it might be, is on those weekly calls. And that's how we map it back then to business outcomes. If our client is having a bad week, we all hear about it. If they're having a good week, we all hear about it. And that's where we get to see under the hood of exactly what's going on. And I think to some of the points that we're talking about there, it's like the likes of it, the vanity metrics or the margins around Black Friday is incredible. Every Irish brand racing to get sales volume. But it's the profitability of those days I question for a lot of brands with some of the discounts that they're giving out and some of the channels that they're pushing. It's almost like a vanity day at this point. So I think there are times as strategists where we need to maybe ensure that, you know, both brand isn't chasing those vanity metrics as well, and we have to be the voice of reason.
And I think that also comes back to the relationship piece. I think the biggest kind of compliment that we get as a team is you feel like an extension of our team. And because we have a core team for every account, and as Ger said, everyone has access to those specialists, we act as an extension of your team. So as we said, if something goes wrong or if they need support or a quick turnaround, we're there. And it's that relationship piece to be able to have those open conversations.
It's a great point, and it's something we do pride ourselves in the agency, is the fact that our clients know the team. You know, there's no hidden bots in the background doing the work for us. It is very much like, you know, we're an independent agency, and from employee 1 to employee 50 odd, you know, we're out in front of the clients. We have a very, very what I call a very hungry team. You know, we've people who want to join Core. They've wanted to come and join in this independent growing agency. We've opened our offices obviously in Dublin there this year. You know, we have great intentions of moving, getting bigger and better. But that's all down to Chelsea's point. It's a team. Like, you know, I'm here a long time at this stage, and everyone's come, and it's a vibrancy in the agency at the moment, which is something that I think is reflected in when you're going out to those clients and you come back and you're buzzing because you're going out to that client, and they're buzzing because there's a good strategy on board and the results are up. But also, to your point, you know, you might have a bad week of results, and that ability to stay calm and go, okay, we're not going to panic.
We're all in it together.
And that's a brilliant thing. Finish up, lads, because we only have a limited amount of time here. A little bit of advice, you know, if you know, we'll go to start with you, Lisa. If you know, you're talking to a client, you're starting out in, you know, search campaign, is there any kind of advice in the current climate that you would potentially give to a client? Say, okay, you need to get these couple of things in line before you start your campaign.
I think it's actually back to something that Ger said earlier, is that, like, at the end of the day, it's people that we're talking about. It's people who are buying, and it's people who are searching or on social. And I think sometimes when you get your marketer or your advertiser hat on, you kind of forget yourself how you'd search for a holiday or how you'd maybe research, you know, car insurance or something along those lines. So I think remembering that, like, we're talking about particular channels, and yes, there's specialists who work in the area, but there are also channels and platforms that you use every day in your own life. So we're going to be trying to ground it in what people really use. And I think to not lose sight of that, and that helps kind of bring the strategy to life, I think, in a clearer picture, is just grounding it in how people will use it naturally, and then how you show up then fit.
It's back to that people buy, people use, let's build on people. Sure. Yeah. Any bit of advice for our audience?
I would say that to not forget the insight, because I think, especially in digital, I think the offline specialists and creative agencies are brilliant at bringing an insight. So what is it that's going to make the campaign effective, or a little bit of magic around how you speak? And the insight will always be found somewhere in your own data, because your data is your people, and whether that's finding, the right type of customer, or realizing that you don't have enough of another type of customer, the not forgetting that there needs to be an audience insight to really create, a magic campaign, would definitely be a watch out.
Brilliant. Chelsea, I'm going to ask you a slightly different one, just from an influencer perspective, right? If you were a brand who maybe has shied away from influencer marketing and they're thinking of taking that first steps into it, a little bit of advice for them.
To be honest, there can be a lot of vanity metrics around influencer marketing as well. And I think naturally people think the influencers with the largest following will drive the most success for brands. And that's not always the case. Some influencers have huge audiences, but they mightn't reach a large percentage of them, or they mightn't have strong engagement. So I think looking outside of just follower count, take a look at the engagement metrics that the influencers have, but also the sentiment of engagement. So a big thing for me is I look at comments to see if there's purchase intent. So for an example, if an influencer is doing content around skincare, are there people in the comments saying, I must buy that? Where can you buy that? I know that they're going to drive sales. So I think kind of taking a deeper look instead of just follower count. And then outside of that, I'd also say build long-term partnerships as well. People know, especially people they follow, like they know the kind of products they use, the brands that they promote. If they promote a one-off product and you never hear about it again, it doesn't feel authentic. So what I would say is have a look at what creators are naturally talking about, either your brand or your product, and then how can you kind of weave authentically into that. So long-term partnerships, and look beyond kind of vanity metrics when it comes to partnering with influencers.
Brilliant. Folks, that was really quick. Time flies when you're having fun. Thanks to Gerard, to Chelsea and to Lisa. I'm Kieran O'Brien. I'm the Group Marketing Director of Core Optimization, and that was Talking Digital.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.